Hey everybody, Nick here, and today we're going to do some disassembly and maintenance on this little guy right here. This is the CRKT, what the heck is the name of this little guy? I mean, look, it's a Graham Razel. It probably says on the side of it, Razelcliffe. There we go. Of course it does. It's a CRKT. This guy just came out of the box directly from the CRKT, and immediately what I got to say is the action. Not bad. Historically, the CRKT Razels have been, shall we say, troubled in the action department. But this one actually seems to work quite well. Off the bat, the action is maybe a little bit grindy. I suspect that cleaning it out will help a little bit. Centering is... It's a little tricky to tell because this part up here isn't actually the top of the blade. Looks to be about good, if not slightly favoring lock side. And everything else seems to be fine. So let's take this little guy apart, see if we can speed that action up just a little tiny bit here. We'll start off by, I've got the T6 in my hand. Go ahead and pull out those back screws. Note they're going straight into the steel on the other side there. The heck? Oh, just one very thick line of Loctite over there. All right, whatevs. And here we go. Pop that loose as well. Beautiful. And then pop out the pivot, which is looking to be T8, I bet. Are we T8? We are. Is this free spinning? No? Okay. And this is trying to disassemble itself in my hand, so I'm going to let it. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, this is actually... Did I put this together? No, it's a joke, of course, but it's kind of coated in oil, which is usually the thing that happens when I get a hold of a knife. But CRKT apparently has headed me off at the pass. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is use some rubbing alcohol here on a clean... Ooh, it's a little grody in there, though. That's for sure. But I'll use some rubbing alcohol here to clean this off. Well done with the detent, I gotta say, is surprisingly good. By the way, if you're curious about rubbing alcohol or any of the other tools I'm using on the channel here, go ahead and check out nickshabazz.com/tools. You can get all the details there. But anyways, we are taking this guy apart. I'll give some first impressions after we're done here, but my biggest immediate impression is please, please, please let this go back together cleanly. I'm actually reasonably impressed. The reason I say that is because, like I said, I love the Razel blade shape. The idea of having a secondary little bit of blade there is actually quite nice. And although this is maybe a more aggressive form of it, make it a little trickier for the scraping kind of cuts that Razels are maybe best for, or at least most versatile for, I am quite enthusiastic about the idea of them finally getting a budget Razel sort of right. And it feels, at least at first blush, like that may be what's happened here. And God knows they need that. Both to get the gospel of the Razel out there to people, as well as to, well, frankly, to get a good budget knife out there. All right, so there is that. Cleaning these little mini bearings off. These are some tiny little bearings. I mean, if we take a look here, holy crap. These bearings make my hands look big. So anyways, yeah, there's that. The one thing to consider with little tiny bearings like this, although this is a factor for any bearing, but you want to make sure not to over-tighten things too much, or you could very easily dimple the blade or the handle of the steel of the handle, that is. And then you get kind of it's hard to describe action, but it's sort of rumbly, bumpy action with speed bumps. All right, I think we're all ready to put back together. I swear, English is a language I'm at least vaguely familiar with. But, yeah, so there we go. Let's pop this into position here. Pop this into position. In that case, oh, good. It's a non-free spinning pivot, D-shaped. That's nice. And let's go ahead and put things back together. We'll start off by placing the stop pin. Then we will use a little bit of Nen oil, 10 weight. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of the oil directly onto the pivot here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and dump a massive amount of oil directly onto the pivot here. Whoops. And then we're going to go ahead and drop on a bearing, and I'll rotate it here. And I'm not actually applying new product here. I'm just trying my best to get that rotated there. Then what I'll do is I'll apply a little bit of oil, a ton of oil, to the detent ball hole there. That will allow this guy to slide back up on there. And what we see here is actually the rudiments of a detent ball ramp. Right there, see how there's kind of 3 facets here? There's the lock face, there's the second facet. That second facet there is the lock bar, is the detent ramp, which is nice to see. And then we will go ahead and drop onto this a 3rd bearing. Okay, what direction does this go? This goes this way. Beautiful. And a 3rd bearing? Did I just say a 3rd bearing? Can I not count? Have I somehow managed to get a PhD without counting? That would be very difficult, actually. I mean, okay, I don't count in many senses, right? But nonetheless, that was one I thought I could count in. Oh, well. Part of the difficulty of adult life is realizing that you are a non-playable character in everybody else's life. And that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. I'm the guy in the shop at the edge of the forest who says, hey, you want to buy a knife? Except I don't actually sell knives. I just tell you how other people... Actually, in practice, what I really am is I'm the guy standing next to you at the stall of the shop of the guy who wants to sell you knives, saying, oh, you should get that one. That one's really good. Oh, I wouldn't pick up that Z-blade that they're holding there. I wouldn't. Yeah, not so much. So, yeah. Anyways, there are worse things to be than an NPC. Life is not necessarily, although many people, especially when young, start off viewing themselves as the hero of some great tale. You can be the hero of your own life, that's fine, certainly. But, part of the I don't know. I think part of the maturing process is realizing that you're not going to be the hero of every story, and that's okay. At some level, all you can do is try and get this pivot aligned. You can do more than that, I'd like to assure you. I'll go ahead and I'll put a little bit of thread locker onto this and then just drop these. The reason I'm doing this is just so that I get this backspace. There we go. Beautiful. And I'm just going to give both of these a little tiny turn here. I'm not really tightening anything down. I just sort of want them to stop coming out, so to speak. Okay, now I'm going to double check. I'm going to make sure, is my stop pin seated? Is my pivot in place? I'm going to disengage the lock bar here to make sure that I can get everything. Oh, okay. See right here. This is why you don't want to put too much gronk on things. You don't want to use too much force immediately. You want to instead push this. This bearing has kind of come off of the pivot there. Okay, beautiful. Now everything is in alignment. So now I can put in the central part here. I don't know how I got off on that tangent there, but, you know, at some level, maybe I've lived a life it's been quite interesting in many ways, some of which good, some of which very tragic. But, you know, at this point in time, I'm pretty content with boring. I would be very happy to live a relatively quiet life. Mind you, as a YouTube person, that's weird too. If I wanted quiet, I wouldn't subject myself to the comments section. Okay, it's too tight now, so let me loosen that up a little bit here. Okay, the action on this is now completely messed up. Part of that might just be the back pieces here are not tightened down. Therefore, everything is sort of grinding. Let's see if that fixes it. Yes, that did. So, the reason... I think I'm a little too tight in the pivot here still. The reason that would happen, by the way, is because in this case, I believe that what was happening is that the screws there were actually wedging these back scales apart in the back here. And given that the pivot is fixed, that meant that it pinched. Basically, when you have two things that should be perfectly parallel, and then when you wedge part of it, it pinches in the front. And so it was, well, pinching in the front. So, and hopefully we will smooth this, loosen this up a little bit. Okay, there's a lot of blade play now there. It's actually feeling a little bumpy. There we go. That's better. No blade play. Maybe a little too tight. Let me see if I can loosen it up just a little bit more here. Gotta find that balance, right? Oh, no, a little tiny bit of play there. Okay. Anyways, there's no, I guess what I mean to say is there's no harm in finding a life and defining a life that, frankly, that brings you joy, that brings you some kind of contentment. Don't feel like you have to run off and live somebody else's dream. If your dream is to find quiet happiness someplace and you've done that, then by God, you got more than most. Mind you, you may have dreams to be doing crazy things, in which case, have fun, but at least for me, I don't know, not my world. All right, so beautiful. We are looking at the centering here, slightly favoring the show side, but not by enough for me to give a crap. Reliably deploying. Honestly, action's really no different than it was previously. Part of it is because I think I don't know whether that's the bearings themselves. It's not like the smoothest action ever, but it's not an expensive knife, so I guess I shouldn't be worried too much. But nonetheless, it is a reliable action, though, and that's really what's important. Ooh, nice ergos. All right, and actually you can choke up a little bit, although it's a little tight in the front there. Let's go ahead and jump into some first impressions here, now that I'm done with Philosophical Corner here. First impressions-wise, like I said, my fundamental hope and dream for this was just that they wouldn't screw it up, basically. That sounds vaguely terrible, but like I said, there have been too many CRKT Razel instantiations that have been made too cheaply, that have been, they're great designs that have been done for, $2 or something like that, and as a result, you ended up with knives that weren't really worth considering. This actually appears to buck that trend, right? We have no play here. We have no other issues with it. We have an action that is absolutely reliable, 100%, unassisted, by the way, which is also worth noting, with no secondary lockups and things like that. It's not lightweight. Oh boy, is it not lightweight. But that's okay. Here, I'll throw it on a scale here. Actually, well, that's starting. Yeah, we're coming in just under 2 inches, which, by the way, is a nice legal size, but we're still coming in 3.3 ounces, so it's a little on the heavier side. But overall, my immediate impression is just like, hey, cool, it's an option. And that's one of the big things, is that it is an option, right? It's got a nice design to it. This is very much a John Graham thing, and actually, it's worth noting that that's what's going on here. This is John Graham Designs. John Graham is, of course, the sort of, if not the originator, I'm sure somebody else has done something in history, right? But he is sort of the biggest proponent of a Razel-style blade, which is a blade with the front edge like this sharpened, which gives you the advantage of 2 edges, one of which can be very nice for scraping and that kind of thing, alongside a more conventional thing. And so the Razels, I've always liked them, and I've always liked Graham's designs, generally speaking, and it's always brought me a little bit of joy to see them being made into production pieces. But this seems like a piece with a nice deep carry clip here. By the way, flush-fitting screws, nice. Good texturing. Ergonomics, like I said, in this position are great. In this position, it's a little close there, even with my relatively small hands, but still, yeah, I'm pretty impressed. So that's kind of my that's my general feeling here. I don't know the price point on it. I try not to until I'm writing up my full review. But so far, I was really prepared to be really disappointed, and actually, so far, I'm kind of pleased. I think This would have been very easy for them to completely underdo, and they didn't. And so I'm happy about that. So anyways, there we go. Let's go ahead and, actually, let's go ahead and nothing. Let's go ahead and end the video. But you go ahead and have yourself an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.